Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's Saturday, March the 2nd. Can't believe we are already in the third month of this year. It sure has flown by. It's a beautiful day. My name is Erica Lopez, and I am proud to serve as the state chair for 2024 of the Hispanic Women's Network of Texas. We are very excited to begin our 2024 Platicas Poderosas series. To get things started, please make sure you have your favorite coffee mug. I don't know if y'all can kind of see mine with the background. We will be selecting the most decorated, the fun one. Iranda is going to be our judge, and then the winner will receive a Starbucks gift card, and that will all happen at the end of the program. As y'all know, we are planning to meet in person this year for our 37th state conference, September the 26th through the 29th in San Antonio. We hope you can join us, and we're very fortunate to have one of our sponsors here with us. And I know I saw his name in one of the boxes. VTX1 Internet, Wesley Willis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your support of our organization. I'd also like to thank our 2024 sponsors that we have to date, Coca-Cola Beverages, IBC Bank, and of course, VTX1 Internet. We are honored to have you all here join us today. If there's anybody if you know of anybody who would like to sponsor our conference, please send their information my way. I'm going to put that in my email address in the chat box as well. So I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I proudly pass the program over to our 2024 Platicas Chair, Erica Moreno.
Good morning, everybody. Like she said, my name is Erica Moreno. I am the Platicas Chair, Committee Lead. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this morning as we kick off our first 2024 Platica Poderosa. I'm very proud of this and the work that everyone has done behind the scenes on this. So this morning I'm going to be moderating along with our Corpus Christi chapter, Iranda Chavez. Iranda, if you want to wave so everybody can see, there you go. So again, thank you, Iranda and the Corpus Christi chapter for taking the lead on this Platica, and we appreciate all the work that you've done. The first thing, housekeeping, before we begin, there are a few housekeeping things that we want to take care of. As with every Zoom, we want to make sure that all our mics are muted so that it'll be helpful to avoid any background noise during our Platica. And secondly, we do have a few people monitoring the chat box. Therefore, please do not hesitate to enter your questions in there. We'll get to them as long as time permits. We hope to be able to answer all of your questions or get your input and share it with everybody. And that's our goal today, is to make sure that everyone, takes something beneficial away from this Platica. And if you have questions, please put them in there. And if we can't answer them during the Platica, I'm sure Taryn and Jeanette and everyone else will be more than happy to answer them and shoot you an email. So if there's not any questions, we'll look at the chat and make sure there's nothing there. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Iranda. Iranda will introduce our panelists, and we'll take it from there. She'll take it from there.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And Corpus Christi is happy to start off the Platica for this year. And the first panelist that we do have is Ms. Taryn de la Rosa. She is a native of South Texas and a founder of the CEO of Vision Toward Leadership, LLC, a small business organizational development consulting company that specializes in professional and leadership development, team building, and career coaching. Beyond her professional pursuits, Taryn is active in the community and serves as the board president for Esperanza de Texas. She also serves as our education co-chair for HWNT of Corpus Christi and oversees the Latinas in Progress Scholarship Program. Welcome, Taryn. Our second panelist is going to be Jeanette Oliveros. She is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and People and Culture Transformation at the Texas Health Resources, one of the largest employers in the region. Jeanette has an extensive background of more than 20 years of Texas Health, serving in various capacities. In her current role, With Texas Health, Jeanette oversees the company's people and culture, DEI strategy and initiatives, collaborating with executive leaders across the ecosystem to create an inclusive work environment for all. In addition, Jeanette has responsibilities for transformative initiatives within people and culture, aiming at standardizing process, enhance capability, and facilitating top of license work. Welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you, Iranda. I appreciate that. Thank you to our very powerful women, very empowering women, Taryn and Jeanette. We appreciate your time this morning on a Saturday morning to help us facilitate this conversation. So going back to our topic, remote work. From remote work back to in office, now what? So since the pandemic hit the world, the concept of working from home has become the new norm, as we know. With the spread of COVID-19, companies were forced to adapt to remote work arrangements to ensure the safety and well-being of their employees. As a result, the traditional office setting has been replaced by a more flexible and adaptable work environment. Now, returning to the office after working remotely has been a really, really difficult transition for some, for employees, personally, professionally, but it slowly has become the requirement, especially in Central Texas, that actually has been, one of the issues is that transition has been really, really conflicting for some people. So the sudden shift from remote work environment to a traditional office setting has posed various challenges, both, like I said, professional and personal. So the first question that I want to ask our panelists is, what types of challenges have you seen both personally and professionally with the return from remote work, especially for women? You may answer from the perspective of employer or employee. So we'll start this one with Taryn. So Taryn, if you can give us your feedback on that.
Absolutely. So in regard to challenges, the first thing that comes to mind is definitely the childcare and the flexible work arrangements that remote work has allowed, particularly for women, right? And I know when I was, my daughter's 23, but when I was, my daughter was in school, having to pick her up and take her, to and from and practices and all these things that we have to do, that's been a major factor in women wanting to stay in remote positions, because it does allow them to have a more flexible schedule and be able to also absorb that childcare cost. So I would say that's one of the main things that I've encountered as we're transitioning back into the workspace.
Jeanette, do you have any feedback on that? You may be muted.
I do. See, this is one of the things that we're learning to unmute, still future habit. So there's so much to unpack with this question because there's multiple facets that are being impacted. So one of the research by Gartner, they survey CEOs and CHROs, and there are 5 areas that were top of mind. One was culture engagement. So remote work has provided us the flexibility and employees the autonomy to returning to the office environments may decrease the motivation and engagement for individuals, particularly in industries that are impacted. We have an industry where women are the primary workers, and they also have the responsibilities for home, either dependent care needs. And then one of the things also, the silver lining that we discovered through this pandemic period has been a shift from how we see work, right? Many of us shifted from seeing work as a place of habit, where you come and do your best and, hopefully move up the ladder and provide for your family, to now this shift in purpose. So does my company have the shared purpose that I have now in life? So making that connection. One of the things that employers are also struggling is to foster those inclusive policies and practices where we're not creating disparity.
Is it pausing?
Well, while that's doing, I can
impact to an office setting at a much faster rate than women are. Some surveys will say even as many as 10% more. So what this means is that organizations need to be at the top of their game to ensure that promotions, the special projects, the assignments, the education opportunities, the things that can help someone grow their career are not simply going to those individuals that are in the office setting that you see. So that is an example. The other thing that was top of mind is productivity and quality. So there's lots of literature on whether productivity is higher when you work from home or when you work in the office setting. In fact, Microsoft had a survey where 85% of their leaders say that a shift to hybrid work has been more challenging in having the confidence that our employees are actually being productive. And 49% of those same managers have issues with trusting their employees to do their life's best work. Then you have other studies like from Harvard Business Review that shows that actually employees are probably working more from home. The blurring the lines between the work-life balance because they feel compelled, particularly women, to go above and beyond to care for the home, what they have to do, and then also demonstrate their capabilities in the work setting. So that's key to employers ensuring that we have that balance and that we are being equitable in the work distribution, and then that we have the right productivity measures. The other concern, that they have cited, it is the collaboration and innovation. So we have 5 generations now that are showing up in the workplace, right? Many people have been hired since they were into remote work, and many have not even seen their coworkers face to face. You have the generational gaps in opportunities on how we communicate with one another. So facilitating the channels of communication, providing the guidance, the in-person collaboration, and then reminding leaders to be leaders of people, right? Not just behind a computer, but when you are in the office setting, to adopt the concept of open office, empty chair. And that means that you are making the rounds with your teams to make sure that you're visible, you're present, you are supportive, not only monitoring their work, but also being that inclusive leader for them as well. And then obviously retention and attraction. So while the resignation phenomenon has been stabilized, I think we recently had the latest reports by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on employment data. It's at 3.7, which is very low, lower than many recent years. There are still retention issues. So the cost to replace one employee can be as high as 1 times their salary. So retention is always going to be top of mind, that employees are going to be looking for and always monitoring it. But when you talked about how important remote work or an opportunity to do hybrid remote work is for our workforce, Indeed said about 57% of women said that the flexible work environments are imperative for them when looking for a job. That is in comparison to how 44% of men responded. And then we also have a study from McKinsey that shows that as many as 58% of Americans are now working at least 1 day from home. So in terms of retention, keeping employees and supporting that transition back to their work setting is going to be vital. And then well-being and worker fatigue. So safety concerns are things that are coming back to mind. So when you tell an employer coming back to work, they're going to want to know what safety measures do you have in place so that I don't get ill while I'm in the work setting. So ensuring that you have the adequate processes, procedures to address those concerns. And then being flexible to adjusting the routines. We adopted some flexibility for the areas that you can. There might be some adjustment times that we need to do for employees who have to either drop off their kids or their parents or attend to things that they were, had more time or capacity to do so if they were avoiding a commute time to the work setting. And then dress code. Let's be honest, we relaxed a lot of our work or policies in dress code, whether you're meeting in person, maybe not showing your face, or maybe you are, many people dress up from up the top, at the bottom, they might be wearing their yoga pants or pajamas. So coming back to the workplace setting is reinforcing those policies and expectations in a manner that motivates your culture and not takes away from culture. And then lastly is the mental well-being. Many employees have experienced stress and anxiety. I know personally many people who have anxiety attacks now when there are crowds of people. So that's a reality that employers need to pay attention to and have the resources in place to help our employees. There's also the economic impact. While you are remote, you're probably saving on tollways, gas, money for those things. And now you're going to have to add those, plus probably extended childcare services. And probably the merit increases that you're able to afford for employees are not going to cover some of that. So there's also that financial stressor that employees are having to think about when working from remote.
Thank you, Jeanette. Those are all good points. Some of the key takeaways that I gathered from that is for me personally, is one, what Taryn mentioned is the taking the kids to and from, practices in school and things like that. That's actually something for women that we take on, we're in charge of that realistically, right? We're the ones that have to be carting our people around. And then productivity. Productivity is a big thing for me in a professional environment, is how much work can we get done when we're at home versus how much work we get done in the office. Some could argue, I know my team could argue, that when we're at home, we do a lot more. We're more productive, and I can't understand that phenomenon really. So when we float over to the next question that I have for our panelists is, how do you think remote work to in-office work, has that really affected performance, do you think? And I'm going to give this one to Taryn. I'm going to start with Taryn. Taryn, how do you think that's affected from your experience? Do you think it's affected performance?
I think the primary challenge in terms of really assessing performance is we have to look at the different perspectives that varying generations have, right? We have older generations in the workplace, even, what we call our boomers, right? We lovingly call them our boomers. But with that, there's a different perspective of what productivity is. And basically, it's the association of, if you're in the office for 8 hours, that means that you're working. But as we all know, in an office setting, there's a lot of chances to get distracted. Again, there's pros and cons to each one of them. But in my experience, and also with the research that I've been looking at, it actually shows that remote work allows for more productivity. And in fact, a lot of companies have seen that their employees are actually more productive and getting more things done. And I think that's also in part to the fact that we're transitioning into more project-based work. We're not just associating work with an hourly, 8 hours a day, because in reality, if we structure work in a project-based manner, we can get more things done if we let go of those previous ideologies that we associated with the workplace and what it means to be productive.
Good points. Jeanette, do you have any feedback on that?
Oh, I think that's an excellent answer. And the only thing I would add to it, I think it is, it does depend on whose lens you're seeing it through, right? So we have a Robin Powered Inc. conducted a survey on executives, and they asked specifically if office visibility had an impact on employees' performance reviews. And what they found out is that 61% of the employers said, no, it does not we don't take that into account when assessing the performance review. But when they were asked if the office visibility had any impact on pay and promotions, 62% said they did. So as organizations, for me, it's an obligation to ensure that we are equipping our leaders with the right tools to do fair assessments on performance, productivity, and to have a clear and objective expectations communicated to employees, right? And being transparent about those. And that means that I don't get to do your performance review to say you were not productive, you're in, and therefore I cannot give you this promotion and I cannot give you this merit increase. It is having the timely discussions with employees to say, how are you measuring up against my expectations, and being fair. And then employers to having the mechanisms to ensure that leaders are actually being objective and doing audits to make sure that we're not creating any unintended disparity impacts because of either a management opportunity or we didn't have the right protocols in place to address those. So,
and I'd like to add to that, because there's some really great points. In addition to that, this goes back to unlearning how we are viewing work. and what it means to be productive and to be providing quality work in a remote environment. And again, that goes back to resetting the metrics through which you are assessing these employees, and you're assessing the work product, right? The quality of the work. And that's exactly what you're doing, in office as well. But the caveat to that is the remote work does allow for the work to kind of speak for itself, as opposed to office politics that you have to engage in when there's in-office standards. And we all know those things. These are visible things that are throughout every organization. And so it's imperative, as Jeanette was saying, that we do equip leaders with the skills to have a new mindset of working with remote employees, and understanding that we need to set clear metrics through and KPIs to ensure that we are effectively assessing their productivity and their work, and not being biased simply because we're not seeing them in a seat for 8 hours a day.
Right. And I would even further that to expand it to say, because you're going to see a lot of articles too, a lot of data that shows that a woman can work 9 hours a day, and the perception is she cannot manage the work being done, right? She cannot get it done. And a man can work the 9 hours a day, and the perception is he's such a hard worker. So those are realities that happen in workplace settings. So again, educating our leaders to remove those perceptions and truly find the objective measures to assess someone's performance. One of the things that I was often asking one of my roles as director of employee relations prior to is when leaders wanted to have internet reports. My employee is spending too much time on the internet, so I need to run a report of what they're doing, right? And having that conversation of how is someone spending 5 minutes on their internet, either searching for some school activity or financial or, Googling whatever, versus someone who is having a chit chat conversation in a cubicle for the same amount of time, right? So it's really addressing the what's the what and addressing the productivity that you want to achieve for your own organization.
Yeah, those are all good points. I like what Melissa Acosta Drexler says in the chat. Productivity must be measurable and objective, which is very true. And to what Taryn, or I can't remember if it was Taryn or Jeanette, said, that you're working 8 hours, how productive are you? If because I'm in the office, we're productive, am I really? Or am I really productive at home? We don't. I mean, the statistics will tell you what it is. So that kind of brings me to the next thing is if I'm an employee or I'm an employer, and I'm looking for work, and I want to decide, should I work remote job that pays X amount of dollars, or should I go into the office that requires in-office work for X amount of dollars? How would I decide? I'd like our panelists to tell us, employee or employer perspective, if you can indicate for us, how could I decide? What are the pros? What are the cons? Like, what will help me from your perspective really decide whether I want to be remote or if I want to be in office? We'll start with Jeanette.
That is really a personal question. So I'm always going to give people the advice of you do you, what is best for you and for your family. If you're going to a work office setting, is going to prevent you from fulfilling your wishes or your aspirations for your family, then you have to take that either financial decision of what is best for you. But one thing that we are learning from the workforce, it is that work-life balance, work-life integration is the new paradigm, right? That is the most important thing. So I'm not going to spend 2 hours driving to my workplace when I can be at my kids' soccer game. So you have to decide that for you. The other thing it is whether there's the concept of people. I'm a people, and I thrive on talking to people, and I miss or long to have that community, right, where I can physically see people and not feel like I'm isolated because we're always behind on a screen, on a computer screen. So that's another consideration that you have to take for yourself is whether you need that social interaction in person, or if you can do away with that and continue to do what you do today. To me, those are the two key things. It is really what's best for your family. And many of us, especially our Hispanic and Latino communities, we also have obligations for our elder parents or grandparents, right? So throw that into the mix of how much time I need to do to take care of things for them and be with them, my family, and then does that working in an office setting take away from that?
Good points. Taryn?
And I'd also, those are really great points, and I'd like to echo her sentiment of do you, right? Whatever works for you and your family, and how that structure is, because I think employers have to remember that the way COVID shifted our perspective of work, and especially the emergence of a lot of e-commerce and people becoming entrepreneurs on themselves. When they are looking for work at an organization, they are going to take into account that they also have the opportunity to go out and make money, on their own, and have that flexibility. And I think that that's part of why there has been such a struggle to fill positions in the organizations, because of the fact that we've now opened it up to global talent, right? Because the pandemic showed us that we could work remotely and that we had this opportunity to do that within organizations. So the talent pool has definitely opened up, and their options have opened up. But then on top of that, just understanding that there's so many more opportunities that people have to make money for themselves and give themselves the autonomy of their respective schedule. And so to your point, it's a matter of saying what works for me. Because, for example, I'll take myself, for example, working as a consultant, working, in pretty much remotely for the past 3 years, I have been having that itch to say, you know what, I kind of miss that structure of going into the office every day, having, that core team there with me. And so I'm kind of in that, transition period too of, what's going to work best for me at this particular point in time. So I think that that's a question that everyone has to ask themselves, and then really educate themselves on their options as well.
I like that. I like Jeanette, what you brought up. You got to do you, which is true. Us as strong, empowered women have to do what we have to do. But on the flip side, I like what Taryn said is, it opened up the talent pool. And I hadn't realized that. There's so many moms, I hate to stereotype us, but I'm going to say that there's so many moms and so many people that can do so much more, but they're limited by staying at home because they've got to do the mom duties, or they've got to do, whatever else, the spouse has them do, because the spouse is usually working. So I like that. That's actually a huge takeaway for me, because, there is a larger talent pool now. You can be a CEO from home. I don't know if you all have ever explored LinkedIn. It's got in office and then remote, and they're pretty C-suite impacted positions. So that's a good point. Any other comments on that, the pros and cons? I like to talk a little bit about social isolation. I know, Taryn, you brought that up you and I were exchanging documents earlier this week. Social isolation is huge on mental health. And I know, Jeanette, I probably didn't prepare you all for this one, but social isolation, how do you think that impacts remote work and in-office work, our employees? I think about our employees, like, what is that doing to them and to us? Any comments on that?
That is a great question, because it does affect, it can affect people in different ways. And this goes back to everyone's different, right? Everyone there, we have what we call our introverts, and then we have our extroverts, and then there's a blend between the two, right? Everybody's different. But that being said, studies have shown that there are employees who do struggle with being able to switch off, and Jeanette mentioned this earlier, switch off that kind of work role. You're working from home, so where the lines get blurred, where does work end and where does home begin, right? And so it can affect your mental health, particularly if you're someone who is going to struggle with turning that off, and then just keep kind of burning the candle at both ends. And so that's where these programs, such as the employee assistance programs, come in, that organizations can provide to their employees, the first step is really understanding your employees on an individual level, right? And that goes back to you understanding the leader or the team lead, understanding their direct reports and understanding the environment in which they work best. And once you do that, then you're able to tailor these programs or these structures in a way where you can help that employee succeed in the environment that they need. So if you have an extroverted employee and you see that they thrive in that kind of office environment with, you know, everyone around, then you can structure that. But if you have an employee that maybe is more introverted and they tend to thrive or be more productive at home, maybe doing a hybrid schedule, things like that. If organizations can be flexible in their thoughts about remote work and just the structure of work in general, I think that that would definitely help to address some of those concerns with the social isolation.
Jeanette, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, Taryn did an excellent job, and I love the advice of, you know, you have to know your employees, you have to know who they are and what it means, certain things mean to them. I'm an introvert, and my kids often call me antisocial, not understanding that I need to recharge my energy being alone, being not in a next party. If there's a party every weekend, I cannot go to every party. I cannot manage that. So understanding those, and also you understanding yourself and utilizing the various resources that employees might have available. For us, we took a lot of effort in providing those EAP services, extending those sessions for our employees during the COVID pandemic period, and now they're permanent, but also doing the virtual check-ins, individual virtual check-ins that employees can do or in a group setting. And then finding those groups within the company that can help, ERG groups that are probably doing a lot of activities, if that's something for you to help you feel included, or be participant once you're back in an office setting. So I think those are things that as suggestions for employers to continue to either beef up or institute some of those if they were not already doing that.
Yeah, and good points too. But Jeanette, could you also, with social isolation being an issue and kind of, I mean, I don't know if I want to call it an issue, but a challenge. What type of resources are employers offering? What things could I go to my employer and say, hey, I need help? Like, what do you have available for me, or what's going to help me with this adjustment?
Yeah, so I think for us, priority one is probably employee EAP services, employee assistance services. And that is counseling. So if you're not familiar with the term, it is counseling. You can speak to someone. We now have behavioral health even online, and there's the stigma that comes with that EAP services, right? When people think, oh, I'm not crazy, or I don't have an issue, but they offer more than what people normally think about that. So utilizing these sources, making the first call, initial call, and taking advantage of that. And there's such a breadth of information and knowledge and expertise that they have. And they've been able to even do that virtually, so that virtual employee health visits are available. That is the one thing that I would advocate wholeheartedly for employers to use that. I know in organizations, we've seen a huge increase in utilization across the system. So that tells you it's an issue for our employees. They're struggling, and not only their employees, but also their kids and family members. So that would be one of the resources that I would do that. I've already mentioned utilizing the ERGs to create that culture of inclusion and belonging for employees. They're huge. They're instrumental for us. We don't have technically ERGs. We have what we call diversity action teams that serve kind of the purpose of ERGs for our organization. Those are a couple that I would recommend. There's financial resources that organizations can offer their employees, right? Subsidies for childcare services. That is huge, especially in a women-driven industry for us in healthcare. That is huge and something that we pay attention to. And then also the physical component well-being. So discounted memberships to fitness centers are some resources. Sometimes you just have to run whatever it is to kind of, find your mindful place. And then we also have what we call Virgin Pools, which is kind of an application that offers all kinds of opportunities for employees to either engage in meditation or activities, like challenging each other for a walk or for so many steps a day. And there are just other ways that we can help employees overcome whatever it is that may be happening, whether it's a isolation issue or whether it's just the anxiety or stress of daily life.
I'd like to add to that because those are great points. And also, I think a huge factor that we're not considering is we need to work with the leaders in the organization to unlearn those biases that they have, and having that stigma, as you were saying, Jeanette, which is very true, of employees utilizing the employee assistance programs or having therapy sessions, things of that nature. We have to understand that with COVID, we all went through a global trauma. And I don't think that that's something that we have talked about enough. We saw people dying in mass amounts, people that we knew that were close to us. And I think that the idea that we just want to take the switch and just put it back to the way it was, we can't. And we really have to work as a collective to understand that we have all been affected, whether some of us want to acknowledge it or not. We have all been affected. And I think as leaders, it's imperative for us to provide safe spaces for our employees, because that's the only way that we're really going to get through this and process this and realize what we can do in our respective organizations to be not only productive, but to be an organization that employees want to work for. So I that's just something that you were talking, and I said, as from a psychology level, because again, that's my field. From a psychology level, that's really, I think that that's fundamental if we're trying to really establish and create these safe spaces and these spaces where employees can thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological safety is huge, right? And we talk about the pandemic and that stressors from the pandemic, but let's be real. We also were fighting another pandemic, and it's the social unrest happening in the country, right? That impacts all of us, and many employees having to deal with that. One of my favorite, I love all kinds of sports. I don't look like I play sports, but I love sports. So Kevin Love is one of my favorite basketball players, and a lot of them are speaking about mental health, and he particularly talked about he's rich, has a lovely girlfriend at that time. I don't know if he's married now. Great career. Why am I not feeling happy? Why? And all of us understand that we probably all have a cross that we're carrying. It might just be invisible. So taking that perspective and addressing individuals in a manner in which it's comforting and creating that space where they can be themselves and they can raise their concerns or seek the help that they're needing. It's imperative.
Yeah, those are all good points and very insightful. I think the overall feeling in the chat, if everybody's reviewing that, is kind of remote work, hybrid work makes us better people at home, better people at the work life in general. So I'd like to take a quick show of hands, really quick, if you can. How many of us are supervisors or manage people? If you can show, like, if you manage people, fill positions, you hire. A good show of hands. So has it been difficult? Let's talk about that. Has it been difficult to hire people or fill those remote positions or in-office positions post-COVID? Because before COVID, if you told me I could work from home, I'd be like, what is that? Are you sure? And post-COVID, it's like, we're all looking for remote work. I want to stay home and, but then you go back to those blurred lines because sometimes we don't know when to stop. And it's like midnight and it's like, oh, I can work. So supervisors and managers, even if you have any comment on this, we'd appreciate it too. Have you had trouble filling those positions? And if so, what have you experienced? And I'll let Taryn and Jeanette give some comments. And if anybody in the group wants to comment as well. Taryn, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that the emergence of e-commerce and, digital marketplaces, the emergence of the popularity of digital or social media management, things like that, all of these things that can be done remotely, that's really put into perspective for the employee their options, right? And we were in a lockdown, so a lot of people, they upskilled, they learned the new skills, and so now you have, again, a wider global talent pool, but we've also opened up that space for opportunities globally to work for these companies that allow you to work remotely. And what happens with that? What comes with that? Well, flexibility, right? You're able to travel, you're able to be with your kids, whatever is important to you, you're able to structure your work around that. And so, yes, there have been some organizations have really struggled in not only attracting the talent, but also retaining the talent. And this goes back to, how are we equipping our leaders to properly lead these teams and these direct reports in a manner in which we're no longer accepting toxic work environments? We are working to develop these leadership skills so that people want to stay in the organization. They want to come and work in the office, because let's be honest, all of us here have worked in some type of toxic work environment. And from a psychological perspective, that is one of the biggest things that I've heard. I don't want to go back to work because I don't want to be in those environments. I don't want to come home, feeling defeated every day, when I can build my business online. And yes, I might work a little more, but I also have the freedom and the psychological safety, as you said, to not have to deal with those things. So I think those are some things that organizations have to consider.
Did any comment? Where's Jeanette? I don't see Jeanette anymore. Oh, there you go.
I'm here. So remember, one of the metrics I always pay attention to, it is religiously, I always look at unemployment rate. And this is because this tells us one thing, right? So if it's an all-time low, we only have 3.7% of the people who are unemployed, then it means that we have a tighter talent pool. So it's a more competitive landscape to get our talent, right? So indeed, in a survey mentioned that somewhere around, I believe, 73% of organizations they survey are challenged on getting employees returning back to the workplace. I was recently contacted, offered a C-suite position in a different state, and I had to decline it because they did not have a hybrid remote work option. I'm not going to be commuting or minimizing my time with my family. So I had to make that personal decision. That is not for me. So organizations need to think about, employees have options and have choices. And yes, great entrepreneurship, showed up during this last few years, the highest ever in our history. So employees can still be successful and find their way. So employers need to be very cautious in really putting forward or thinking through when they're going to be making some mandates. And instead of making mandates, maybe it is looking if their employees, they can afford, if their industry can afford, and avoid that voluntary transition, is to really look at, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Am I going to kill my morale by doing so? Or what are my gains from that? And really being clear and articulating the expectations to the employees. Big supporter of developing policies and not mandates that are really purposeful and really considering employee needs. Oftentimes when I ask leaders does it matter that someone's not clocking in at 8:05 versus 8 in the morning? Really be judicious about what really matters at the end of the day. Yep. And what are the factors that would motivate employees to come back to work? Is attendance to being on site required 5 days a week versus maybe 1 day, or maybe 3, or maybe every 2 weeks, or maybe just having monthly staff meetings in person? So really thinking deep in what is the what in addressing that. I think the more a flexible approach is going to be better results than the one size fits all. It's probably not something that can be sustained long term. We have to look at individuals' and the motivators and the things that are affecting whether they would come back to work or not. So as you're having difficulty filling roles, filling positions, you probably need to take a step back and look at what is the must versus what is it that I want or would like to have in a wish list.
Yeah, very good point. And I'd like to highlight what Melissa Acosta Drexler just said. I'll go in every day for a great breakfast taco.
I did want to, I saw her comment also that she said, connections are essential for leaders and
Yes.
employees. And I want to comment on that because you're absolutely right. But that doesn't necessarily need to be face to face because, and again, this goes back to unlearning how we think about social relationships, right? And how we structure our interactions, right? And Jeanette talked about this, being intentional with how we work with our direct reports. I myself lead a team and they're in India. So I can't, just get on I wish I could go because I love their food, but I can't do that. And so I have to find ways and strategies, which goes again to knowing your direct reports on an individual level and what works for them, where I could meet with someone and they need to see me maybe a daily check-in to review what's going on. Whereas someone else, if I give them a project outline with the deliverables and the timeline, I know that they're going to get it done and we're checking in maybe once a week. So it really goes back to understanding your direct reports, but also kind of unlearning how we view social connections. And this is even evident with social media and things of that nature, right? We have people on our social media, I know I do, that I haven't seen in years, and I feel like I'm watching their children grow up before my eyes, right?
Very true.
So I feel like we're family. So again, I just want to comment on that, and that we really have to shift our perspectives on how we think about connections and establishing connections within an organization, because face-to-face is not the only medium through which we can do that.
That's correct. And so
Great point.
I'd like to give Delia just really quick from our chat, if you can, she wanted to share her experience. If you want to do that really quickly, Delia, so that we can make sure to get your insight.
Thank you all. So I think full disclosure, I do work for Pfizer. And it's interesting enough that I actually have a job that requires me to be in the field and also has remote capabilities. And I think it's a good balance. But I also think that depending on the job, it's important to consider what is the proper work environment and also what is the balance. Because, during the pandemic, as across the company, we pulled our field force and had them all working remote because we didn't want to contribute to the spread of COVID. And it was important for us because we were setting the example, having had the vaccine and also other regimens to treat COVID. And so when COVID height, declined and we started to pull our force back into the field, we took downfalls as having to take precautions. And so at the same time, though, we were strongest when it came to the antiviral community and the vaccines. But now moving forward, the shift is still being felt internally. And many jobs were lost as a result to even planning for this, what would become of this pandemic today. And simply stating, it's like our CEO said, it is critical to have a balance of remote and in-house, simply because you lose that interpersonal relationship and the communication within your coworkers to get the job done that you simply can't get done at home.
Yeah.
And we closed facilities that required commute because employees refused, they didn't want to make that commute. So at the end of the day, it was either their job or doing that commute. And so the CEO decided to cut those jobs that would require that commute. And so I think essentially it's good to appreciate the different perspectives and the needs from the company and not just the employees itself. Yes, it's got to be a win-win situation for both. And I think fully understanding the role and what it takes and not losing sight of having those relationships with your coworkers that you simply can't get behind a computer. You know, I could even remember coming to the team being new. I was interviewed virtually, never had even met my boss nor my team. And our first team meeting, it was this pure excitement of finally getting to meet people we had been engaging with virtually. And it just goes to show you the importance of camaraderie in person. And I don't want us to lose sight of that because we're so focused on our, responsibilities at home, trying to balance that with work. But I do think that there is a balance of both, and going into the office a couple days a week, whatever it is, finding that balance. And that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. I appreciate that. And I think that adaptability is a really big thing here, and something that we've taken away from COVID is that we have to adapt. We've got to change things. We've got to create things. And so I think that's something that's a huge takeaway for me, from remote work to in office and vice versa.
I'd also like to comment, if I could, really quickly, which all great points, Billy, and I completely agree with you on that. One thing that I did want to note, and this goes back to employers changing, companies changing their perspective. We no longer live in a workforce where employees are, and again, this goes back to generational. Employees are no longer, there's no longer a benefit to be loyal to that employer, because back in the day they had pensions, right? So you stayed with your employer, you got a pension. However, where we're at now, there are more options for employees. So while, yes, an organization needs to structure themselves based on their needs, they also need to understand that we don't no longer live in that type of setting where the employer is expecting, the loyalty of the employee. The employee is now finding ways in which it benefits them. And so if an employee doesn't want to go back into the office, that's a choice. So now we have to find employees and attract employees that want to do that. And we also have to retain them. And so I completely agree with your points, but I also think it's important to hold the organizations accountable as well, in the aspect that they also need to understand that, again, employees have options now, and it doesn't make them good or bad. It simply is, and we need to adapt, as Erica was saying.
Agree. It's all about adaptability. So thank you, Taryn. Thank you, Jeanette. We could, as we know, we could talk about this for hours. But again, being respectful of everyone's time, it is nearing 11 o'clock. Once again, I can't express it enough. Taryn, Jeanette, we appreciate your time this morning, your expertise, good points, good, valid points. And I think a lot of things are going to be taken away from this, and that it's okay to work remote. It's okay to be in the office in that transition. It's okay to have, adaptability issues in a sense. So thank you again. I'd like to switch over to our closing remarks, our chair, State Chair Erica Lopez.
Thank you all. It was such a wonderful conversation, one that needed to be had. We've all obviously experienced the pandemic and the pros and cons from being able to work from home or being called into the office. I personally have had to transition back into the office. So it has been an adjustment. So I'm glad that we came together and were able to have this conversation. Thank you so much to our speakers for joining us today, and our moderators, Erica and Iranda and the Corpus chapter, for assisting with this Platica. Our next Platica will be held on Saturday, June the 1st. So hard to believe the next time we'll have another Platica will be in the beginning of summer practically. So we'll start working on defining the topic. And I do ask that if you have not had a chance to view our beautiful website, that you take some time and visit HWNT.org. It is our one-stop shop. It has all of our upcoming events on there at the state level. And as y'all know, we are meeting again in person for our state conference. So if you haven't registered, you can do so through the conference website as well. If you are not a member and you enjoyed joining us today, please visit our website and select the chapter that you would like to join and click Join Now. and it will take you directly to the application. We'd love to have you join this empowering organization that has impacted the lives of so many women throughout the state. So with that, I'm going to have everybody pick up their mug, show them off, so Iranda can have a good look of all of our participants.
Hey, I just wanted to add one more thing. Thank you so much for, spending time with us this morning. You could be doing other things, but this is a really good topic to discuss, and utilize those resources that HR offers you. My experience has been over 20 years of HR, and a lot of employees believe that things are shared with the employee assistance program, but it's not. It is confidential, so please utilize all the resources that you're able to use, okay? But love the mugs. Let me see.
Hold up the mugs. Oh,
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm so sorry. What happened?
I have no idea.
I think Vanessa's trying to take a group photo. Vanessa, is that you?
Sorry,
Okay.
something clicked. Okay. I'm gonna be picking Genevieve Rodriguez. Brown is beautiful. I love that mug. I think everyone has a really beautiful mug. But Genevieve Rodriguez.
Awesome. So Genevieve, can you put your email in the chat or email me? You can send it to, and I will make sure. Okay, if you can email me to the email I just put in the chat, and I'll make sure and send off your gift card. So Vanessa, can you take a group photo? That would be awesome, so we can post it on our social media pages.
Yeah, let me try it out. I took a screenshot, but let me try it out through Zoom.
And thank you again to one of our sponsors that joined us today. Really appreciate you taking time to see all of the wonderful programs that we offer throughout the state. Okay. All right, smile, get your coffee cups up. I think this is gonna work. Have to click allow. Oh, it's just me.
I saw.
Well, you know what? I can take a group photo through my camera. So all righty.
I took a few screenshots already, so I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. Awesome. Well, we have 2 minutes to spare. Any last minute questions?
Lots of great comments in the chat. Thank you. Appreciate everyone putting in your input there.
So we're celebrating Women's History Month, so shout out to all of you for all the wonderful work that you do, and don't forget to just do self-care.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy this beautiful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.